In this video, we'll talk about how Law stores its data in SQL Server. Law PreDiscovery has a very simple table structure when it comes to storing data on the SQL Server, and because of that, it's really great for us users who want to go on the back end and play with the data ourselves. There are a couple of ways I can show you these tables. We can open SQL table and go through them one at a time, and I can talk until you fall asleep. Or what I think the better way is going to be, I'm going to start a Law project, I'm going to load data, and I'm going to work with it, and I'm going to show you how data is changing on the back end. And this way I'll cover most important areas of a SQL database and not necessarily absolutely every table, because some of them are not actually important. So let's dive right in and load some data into Law. To connect to SQL Server, I'm going to use SQL Server Management Studio. You can download this for free from Microsoft website. I'm going to go to File, Connect, and I'm going to put my server name. This is where Law is going to be storing its data. So I'm going to click Connect, and I have connection to the server. So let's switch back to Law, and we'll make a new workspace, or we'll make a new Law case, and see what happens on the SQL side. All right, so I'm going to specify my SQL Server name and the connection. This will be specific to your network, and I'm going to give a case a name. We'll call it let's call it 000 SQL demo. This way it sorts on top. And to store it, I'll just make a folder on my desktop. So call it SQL demo. So here we go. I'm just going to grab this path and I will copy it right here. And let's click on OK. And now the first thing that's going to happen is the database on the SQL Server will be created. Let's switch to SQL Management Studio. Click on Databases. And we'll see our 000 SQL demo. And what we're interested in are tables. We're not really interested in views or anything else. So this is where we're going to be for the rest of the video. And right now, pretty much everything is going to be blank except fields. Field is the only table that got populated because of the way Law works. It keeps track of all the fields that it uses in a separate table. It doesn't just rely on a table structure. All right, well, we're not too interested in a fields table at the moment, so let's close it. Switch to Law, and let's import some data. So I'm going to go to Import, Electronic Discovery, and I will take an mbox file. I will drag and drop it in here, and I'm going to go to Custodians, and I will add a new custodian. So we'll call it John Smith, and we'll click on Add, and click OK. Now, as soon as we did that, something happened on the SQL, and there's a table called Custodians. We're going to right-click, select Top 1000, and we'll see that a John Smith was added to a list of custodians. He has an ID of 1, and there we have his name, and we have some other information where it was created, modified, and so on. All right, so that's our first entry. So this is where custodians are kept in the table Custodians. Let's go in here and import this data. I'm sure you know when you import data into Law, it keeps track of those sets as sessions. So that's the next entry that was added, is table ed session. We can right click, select, and we see that we created a session. Again, it's session ID 1, and it tells us where the logs are saved, and it has a name. Sessions have sources, meaning what data did we load. So if we go to ed sources, select this, we'll see this was our source from my desktop, and this is the data that was loaded. And now the data has been loaded, we can go to SQL Management Studio, and we can close our sessions and the source tables, as well as a custodian table, and we can go to our main table here, a table called Table Doc. This is where all the metadata, or most of the metadata, is being written into. So we can right-click and select Top 1000 rows, and we can see that this is this has all the metadata. So we have our file description, or we have our hash values, we have our conversations, and so on. If we were to go to law and just click on this display all records button, we will get a similar view, which is also coming from a table doc, which contains metadata for the documents we have loaded. So what kind of cool things we can do with direct access to SQL Server? Well, we can access any data we want, and we can do anything we want to it. So let's close this, and let's right click on table, and we'll say edit top 200 rows. Now that I open this, this is in the edit mode, so now you have to be very, very careful with what you do here. So let's go into our error message field, because this is the one that I feel is somewhat safe to play around with. Let's say I type a word test. Now watch this. As soon as I exit this row, this data gets saved into the server's database. So if we go into law here, we'll see that this change was written to the database, and we'll see it right away. There it is. The error message is test. We made a change here, and notice we did not have to click a save button. All we had to do is type few letters and exit that document, and it automatically got saved and written to the database. So it is very, very dangerous when you poke around here, but that's the power of SQL Server. And the prompt I'm getting here is because I open a table doc view and it thinks that somebody's been changing this data. I'm going to click on yes to force write this change in. And now in law, you see how that just appeared there. So we can go in and we can modify metadata, so we can customize any fields for exports that we need. All right, let's take a look at something that's kind of interesting. You see here, we have a field custodian. However, if we go to a SQL Server, we'll see that there is no custodian field. We have custodian ID. That's because our custodian was saved into custodians table. See, we have custodian with ID 1, and a table doc contains ID 1 of that custodian. Well, that's a little unfortunate, because it makes it more difficult to work with some data. And the same thing applies to ed session, ed source, and ed folder, which, as we've seen before, exist in separate tables: ed session, ed source, and folders, which we did not look at, located in here. Again, idea is the same. You have this folder name with ID 1, which corresponds to the ID in the table doc. Well, how can we retrieve actual custodian names so we can see it? Well, for that, we're going to turn on our diagram view, our criteria, and SQL. I like to turn all these on just so I could see what I'm working with. I'm going to extend this, right click, say add table, and I will select custodians, click add, and close. Now we're going to join these two tables based on the custodian ID, and by default SQL Server is joining these tables incorrectly. So I'm going to click here, press delete. I'm going to find my custodian ID, and I'm going to join custodian ID to ID, and I will check name here, and now I can run this query, and the last column should be the actual custodian name, not the ID. Next thing we want to do is, what if we have some data that doesn't have any custodians? Well, that connection is going to fail. So the right way to do it is to right click on our connection and say select all rows from table doc. So this way all rows from table doc will be retrieved regardless if there's a custodian or not. If there's no custodian, that field is going to be blank, as opposed to not seeing any rows. And if we run it in our case, the results are going to be the same. A couple of things you want to do here is take out top 200, for example, and you may want to specify a specific filter or a criteria, so you're only retrieving data you want to look at. You don't want to be grabbing too much data. If you try to retrieve too much data, you put a lot of strain on the server. So for example, if we want to work with email subject where it contains a specific word, we can find a field called email subject, and we'll say, for example, version, and we'll use a percent sign before and after quotes to signify that we want to find this word anywhere in the subject, and it will look like so. So we only have 3 documents, and now if we're interested in working with them, we can go in here and we can see the data, maybe export it out, or do whatever we need. And if we do want to add other tables like ED session, we can do the same thing. We can right click, say add table, and we can add session and sources, and we do it exactly the same way, same type of join. Make sure you're using the right ID, because if you connect the session ID to a custodian table, well, you're gonna get some really weird results. So that kind of covers table doc and how it stores data. Let's close all this and let's go to table page. This is the second most important table because this one stores information about individual pages as opposed to the documents themselves. What we need here is we need to image some documents so we could see how they look. So let's go to law, and I'm going to do I'm going to image a few documents, and then we'll see how those images are stored there. All right, I have imaged first 2 documents. Let's switch to SQL Server and refresh this and see what we have. Our first document with ID of 105 is here, same ID 105 in our table page, and it tells us where the images for this document are stored. If we go to the next document, 106, we'll see that this one actually has multiple pages. It's an 8-page document, so each page is listed here. Let's go ahead and number these documents and see how this table changes. I'm going to filter for all the documents with TIFF status C, go to batch process, and we'll say number ABC001, V doesn't matter, begin. And when we refresh our table here, you'll see that UID has been assigned. So this is a page level number or page ID that's been assigned to every page. And if we look in our table doc, you'll see backdoc and enddoc were assigned as document level numbers. Well, what happened if we were to endorse these documents now? Let's go to Tools, Batch Process. We'll click on Endorse. We'll click on Header Footer. And now we're going to click on Page ID. Well, this is the page ID that's coming from table page. So let's click Begin. Click OK. We're going to refresh our table page. And you'll see that the footer has been set to 25, indicating that a footer has been added by endorsement. So you can use this as a quality control step just to make sure all the pages received an endorsement in case stations crash or something like that happens. All right, that's a quick overview of SQL tables inside Law PreDiscovery. If I missed anything, or if you want me to go over any specific tables in depth, leave a comment in the comment box below. I'll make a follow-up video if you're interested. Otherwise, feel free to share this with coworkers, subscribe to my channel, click on the bell to get notified when I post new videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.